So we are going to read our Bible together this morning in church. And okay, I'm going to try to stay out of being sarcastic this morning. Yeah. As I told you guys, I believe in character miracles, and that's one that I need. Apparently, the Holy Spirit is indicating to me in this new year. That's one of them I need some cleansing in. Okay. So, you can start whenever you want, and you can turn that on. That'd be awesome. I want us to go to Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37. And this, it's okay. This, I could take 3 or 4 hours to unpack. And so, again, I'm just asked for grace from the Lord and grace on your part. So some of you just might need to actually be as intercessors today to help me to be able to deliver this payload, that it will come across as a word of affirmation and confirmation, that of which is in the Lord's heart. And when you speak from another realm. And when you speak, you do not speak to what is. And when you speak, you reach into the unknown to make it known of your kind intention. And so we align with your word, your will, your ways, and all that you desire to do. And so we align with your ways, with your word, your will, and all that you desire to do today. Come, teach us how to yield and not look over our shoulders, but keep our heads onto the plow and looking straight ahead. We will not look back. We will not look back, but we'll learn from all that has been, and we will plow ahead, and we will learn from your word, your will, your ways, and from everything that you have designed for us. So come, Holy Spirit, and open your word from out of the life of Joseph to us today, for your holy name's sake. Amen. You can just keep playing, and if you have to have 3 or 4 people take turns, I guess you do. Okay. So Genesis chapter 37, I'm going to take a stab at Joseph, a man of many garments. Joseph, a man of many garments. We've all heard probably teaching, if you've been in the faith or been in church for any period of time, about the life of Joseph, and about him being a dreamer, and about how he was given a gift of dreams. But he didn't necessarily have the wisdom that was necessary to go along with the gifting that was given, and so he prematurely would talk. Maybe that's what he did. Prematurely talked about his dreams to his brothers, but his dreams was actually about his brothers. not necessarily in the greatest light. And so they react to the dreams that Joseph shares, that Joseph has, and they act them out. It becomes almost self-fulfilled prophecy. And then, but that wasn't the end of the story. And so often the life of Joseph is talked about, here comes the dreamer, which I have done as well. And so while I am including that aspect, I have a different approach that I want to look at the life of Joseph with you today. Joseph in Genesis chapter 37 in verse 2. These are the records of the generations of Jacob, of Jacob. Verse 3, Joseph, when he was 17 years old, he was pastoring the flock in Wisconsin, where there were a lot of cows. No, these are sheep. When he was 17 years old of age, was pastoring the flock with his brothers, while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah and his father's wives. We're not going to make a doctrine out of that one either. And Joseph brought back a bad report. Joseph didn't begin by bringing a good report. And some of us start off with a bad report, even amongst our brothers. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Kind of sounds like a tattletale, but anyway, but this is what he did. He's 17. He's already gifted. Because gifts and callings of God are up to God. And we don't earn them, even though we get caught in that trap at times, as though that we can perform to a certain level so as to be able to have the brownie right or the achievement badge of like, I have this gift because I deserved it. No, none of you really understand grace. Because gifts are grace, and they're packages of grace. So everything I'm going to be saying is an extra today, okay? So why I'm going to say this is not in my notes? You don't know that it's not in my notes. So it's like, so why am I going to say that anyway? Okay, so I'm not going to say it, but even though I already did. How's that? So, by the way, this is not in my notes. Because those are my notes instead of the, okay, great. Instead of these. Okay, so he's 17 years old. He's serving at 17. He's pastoring the flock. And sometimes our origins of our beginnings literally can become a foretaste of our future. We each start somewhere. And so then in verse 3, chapter 37, verse 3. Now, Israel loved Joseph. Now, that is his father, Jacob. He wrestles with the angel of the Lord to receive the blessing. His name becomes changed from Jacob, the supplanter deceiver, and his father's name becomes changed to being a father of nations, Israel. And so God changes the generational history of being a supplanter deceiver because he was not the firstborn, remember? But, there's this birthright issue, and I don't want to tell the whole story about Jacob this morning, but it's like, but he steals, takes with somebody's help, and takes the birthright that belongs to the firstborn, and he gets it. So that's where the terminology and the meaning of the name, that he was a supplanter, a deceiver. That goes pretty good with the discerner, because he was first a deceiver before he became a discerner. That was pretty good, by the way. And God will use all of our beginnings redemptively to turn it on its head if need be. In Genesis 37:3, now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his sons. And so this is now Jacob, who becomes Israel. He wrestles with the blessing, and then God gives him these sons who then later become like the tribes. And he loves Joseph more than all of his sons because he was the son of his old age. He was the one who's the afterthought, who wasn't supposed to happen. Do you guys are you adults in the room today? Wake up. Oh, hi, over there. 2 months, no, okay. All right. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than all of his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him and look at this, the father did it. You would think that this was the mama that did it. Now, maybe mama was probably involved, and maybe Joseph just decrees it. Israel decrees it, but we don't know for sure. But what we do know is this. It says that this varied colored coat is given to him, if not made. It says, and he made him a vari-colored coat. That, again, is beginnings. And what the enemy tried to use for evil, it was a sign of our Father's great intention. Because he did not make him a standard cloak. He made him a cloak or a tunic to wear that stood out and was distinct and made him feel favored, and also made him probably like, dude, all eyes are on me. I don't know about this. Wait a second. Mine's bright and it's all these varied colors, and everybody else's is one color with some lace on it. But mine is rainbow. And so he made him a vari-colored tunic. But watch, now we're going to skip several verses. We have to. We're going to go to verse 23 in the same chapter, 37:23. So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic. So he is given a birthright. The father had actually been used to steal someone else's. The father gives the son of the old age, his older age, great favor, and designs him something extremely distinct that would set him apart. And then it turns around, and a little while later, because of maybe not walking in the fullness of wisdom with the level of gifting and anointing that he had, or maybe there's some other reasons that's involved here. But look at what happens. My subject matter with you today is a man of many garments. Verse 23. So it came about that when Joseph reached his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, of the vari-colored tunic that was on him. And I'm going to tell you, there is a warfare over your inheritance. There is a warfare over your inheritance, and there might even be some in familiarity that will get jealous of the calling that is on your life. And they might even be used to try to strip you of what they believe is theirs. But okay, this is not in my notes. I have all kinds of people who come up to me and they say, I want your mantle. And then I used to be a lot more patient with that probably. And said, oh, yeah, bless you, hallelujah, bam, whatever, okay. Well, nowadays, I'm just not quite as tolerant with some of that because I think some of that's just a bunch of fluff. Some of it's a wonderful hunger, and some of it's just not exactly right. And so now I say, if they say, well, I want your mantle. Well, I say, well, I'm not through with it. I'm still using it. And so guess what? You can get your own. I mean, I don't even know if I have one in a sense, okay? But if I have one, guess what? Our Father is an equal opportunity employer, and you don't need mine. I'm still using it, okay? Because when you study about mantles being transferred, they didn't happen until the guy left town. I mean, left town, okay? So I just wanted you to understand that it's like, yeah, you can get touched by the shadow of that which is upon another, and you can serve in their sphere, and you will receive an impartation, and you will receive an inheritance. But I want you to know this: our God is so personal, He is so amazing, He is so distinct, that when you look upon somebody else and you want what they have, that can be hunger, and that can also be nothing more than insecurity and covetousness. He says, by the way, I told somebody recently, it's like, man, you have a really hot wife. Oh, excuse me, I didn't say that. I was actually giving the guy a compliment. And I did it in all boundaries. I just stretched something a little bit, okay? And I said, I says, my gosh, I said, I want you to know something. It's like, I don't covet my neighbor's wife. But you know what? God, I said this, I did, yes, I did do this. But I did it in all boundaries. Okay, back up, James, back up. Let them know I did it in boundaries. And I did it in all boundaries. And I said, you know what? God has so blessed you with such an amazing helpmate. But listen, sometimes those kinds of statements can be based out of insecurity, and they can be based out of jealousy, as though, and please don't overread into what I just used as an example, that God doesn't have something for you. That as though the best is already taken. Well, the best for them is already taken. The best for them is already taken. But God has the best for you. And He preserves the best for you. But when we lack security in our identity, we want our brother's tunic. And we even strip our brothers of their inheritance. And there's a lot of political spirit that's alive in the church today that does that. Okay, moving on. Changing of garments. Chapter 37, verse 23. So it came about that when Joseph reached his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the very colored tunic that was on him. You know what that means? He was naked. He was stripped of his external identity. And that becomes a test of his internal security. Verse 24. And they took him and they threw him into a pit. Now the pit was empty and it was without any water in it. So he's stripped of his garment, of his birthright. He's thrown into the pit, and he becomes sold for money as a slave. I'm not saying that any of that relates to anybody in this room. I'm trying to build a picture. But watch verse. I have to skip a lot, okay? But in the same context, go to verse 31. they take the tunic, they take it off of him, they strip him, they put him in a pit. The brothers do. They probably spread a bad report about him. And then look what is in verse 31. So they took Joseph's tunic, they slaughtered a male goat, and they dipped the tunic in the blood. So now they try to malign, distort, or harm the inheritance. Not only rob it, but now they're going to distort it. Well, we all know that he deserved this anyway, because he was the hot shot and he acted like it. And I don't know if you, but let's keep going. That's verse 31. So they strip him of his birthright, but it's a test. You will go through test of changing of garments in your lifetime. I come from a town of 259 people. Goll, Missouri. The big thing for us was to be able to go to the state fair. That was our vacation. We grew up poor. My daddy was kicked out of the house when he was 12 years old, got a 6th grade education. He was lacerated when he was 11, laid in bed bleeding for 6 weeks. Today, that would have been child abuse, and he would have been taken out. So my dad was homeless. Really? Yeah. That's the cloth I came from, folks. I came from a cloth because I've only in my past I would talk about my generational inheritance of righteousness and holiness and prayer from my mother's side. But I have another side of my tree too that God has had to redeem. We all come from somewhere, and this too is a part of my inheritance. I'm the first Goll to ever return to the German soil. Been there at least 24 times. As I shared with you all in the School of the Discerner, an experience that I had being on a flight from Tel Aviv, my first time to Israel back, and how I was called up to the first class. I didn't feel like I deserved to be there. And as I was given this free seat, as it were, and I end up sitting next to the Deputy Secretary of the Joint Chief of Staff, and I prophesied to him. He asked, well, who are you, and who have you been with, and how do you know what you know? And I said the following: I'm a nobody who knows somebody who knows all things. But I don't stop at I'm a nobody. I do not stop there. But sometimes we each get smacked on the head to try to take us into downward spirals, to try to smear our nose in, no matter how old you are, how young you are, to try to, and even, let's see. Let's move on, because that's not in my notes. Okay. Yes, their test. And so they strip him of the favor. They try to. They externally strip him. They throw him in a pit. The brothers are jealous of his calling. But if they only understood that their father loved them and that they had a destiny distinct for every tribe. But they suffered with that, and so they compared themselves to another. Comparison is one of the most subtle and terrible tactics of the enemy. Is comparison, contrast. Okay, so they strip him of his garment. They put him in a pit. They even take the garment and they are going to defile it. And they are going to weave a conspiracy story that's full of falsehoods. And they're going to now, and they stained the tunic, the garment, with blood. Verse 31. And they dipped the tunic in the blood. And they sent the vari-colored tunic and brought it to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine it to see whether it is your son's." Doesn't say our brother. Your son's tunic or not. Then he examined it and said, "It's my son's. A wild beast has devoured him, and Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." So now the father falsely believes that his son is no more. I wonder what the father felt like. I wonder, because the father had dreams for every one of his sons. I wonder what that did to I wonder what it did to the mother, who's not even mentioned. I bet that tore her up. That in the house there was fighting over inheritance, when if they actually really knew, there was enough to go around for everybody. Just like I'm using the illustration, people say, "I want your mantle." I was like, I don't really think you really do. Okay? But by the way, I'm not through using it. But what I'm really saying is this. You can get your own the same way I did. Because he's an equal opportunity employer. You really don't want mine. It don't fit. That's like Jonathan and Saul and all that story. And he takes on the other, and he's like, well, it clanks, it just don't quite fit. And so David. And so David had to go back because he puts on someone else's armor that isn't his and it doesn't fit. And he's trying to walk in someone else's anointing. Someone else's inheritance. I'm going to flat out destroy some freaking religious spirit myths. What you covet that belongs to another will not fit you. It won't fit. Why? Because he's so wonderful. He's so personal. He's got something waiting, designed just that fits you. Tailor-made for you. Jesus, this is good. This is good. Somebody said this is good teaching. Good. I got to get going, though. Jesus. Chapter 39, verse 2, changing of tunics. Going through a period of time. Chapter 39, verse 2. Watch this. The Lord was with Joseph. Well, the Lord was with Joseph in the beginning when he was 17. And he gets robbed of his tunic. But listen, when you have a call, and when you know your destiny, it might go through all kinds of shapes and morphing and different expressions. But when you know your Father, it cannot be stolen. Someone might try to strip it, but I'm going to tell you something. Your Father will never strip it off of you. Not that which is your inheritance. Our Father does not do that. And look at chapter 39, verse 2. Because now Joseph is going through a test. And he's called to rule. He has a calling to rule. But he has to go through the process. Because the process to obtaining the promise was as or more important than what the promise was. Chapter 39, verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful businessman. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and how the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. And so Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant. So he becomes now disgraced, discharged, and left in his family lineage by his father his earthly father thinks he's dead. And his brothers know that he's not. And their brothers are just hoping this guy never shows up on the scene again and spoils their false narrative. But when you have a call, and when you are walking in your own garment, your own sphere, listen, your spheres of expression will change. But the call remains. And you in life might go through multiple phases. And now, he's a businessman. Wait, what? That's a defiling of his call. He's touching the secular. Oh, no, I rebuke that. That can't be right. He's a businessman. Not only is he a businessman, he's and when you're a successful businessman, the way I understand it, you actually dress different. You might have some upgrade shoes. You might have a coat, and it's like, yo, baby, It's a styling. It's a Stefani El Fervanci or something. And you got a watch on that like glistens. Because the call stays the same. But the spheres do not stay the same in the process of becoming. And so he became a successful businessman. Wow, that means he changed garments. And then he catches attention to the ruler, and then the most successful businessman now becomes a servant. And that means he changed garments again. And he has to put on the garment of a servant, which is okay when you are secure. When you are secure in who you are, going over to New Testament terminology. When you're secure in your identity in Christ, you can get shifted from this sphere to that sphere to this sphere to that sphere and still remain secure in your identity. And you can change garments, and you can flat out change them well. And you go, no, that can't be right, because if I become a businessman, that's going to be like a wrong. That means I'm going to be walking away from my calling. Well, Joseph did it. Let's keep going. He became a successful businessman. Out of that, he found favor. He ended up serving, in a sense, rich, influential people. In chapter 39, verse 4, so Joseph found favor in his sight, and he became his personal servant. That means he becomes a personal assistant servant to influential people. I have a friend right now, I'm not going to mention his name, and he has been a pastor. He carries a pastor's heart. Some say that he has been an apostle. I might be. And he's changed garments. And some of my friends don't get it. I do. And he's changed garments. And he's gone into the marketplace. And now he's done so well that he is a servant to billionaires in the world. Because God's gift will bring you before people that you don't feel qualified to be before. Okay, all right. Personal servant in an Egyptian house. Chapter 39, verse 12. So then we have the whole Potiphar situation. He's now promoted. He's ministering. He's actually perhaps living in the palace. A Jezebelic influence wants him to do something that's going to go against his character, but could have probably advanced him in promotion. Verse 12. She caught him by his garment. She caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garment in her hand, and he fled and went outside. Now, maybe he was tempted. I don't know, because somehow or another, she did get hold of his garment. But he did not do what she said that he did. Just like the brothers made up lies about him. Now, a woman is going to say, this dude, this handsome dude, he laid with me. And it's not true. And he flees, which is what Paul the Apostle says. He says, flee immorality. And he does. The problem is, this Jezebelic influence grabs hold of his tunic, and he goes through another test because he gets stripped of his garment again. She caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me, and he fled, and his garment is left in her hand. And he fled, and he went outside. And when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and that he had fled outside, she called to the men of her household, and she lies, and she makes up an accusation, and she says, see, he's brought into the Hebrew to us to make sport of us, and he came into me to lie with me, and I screamed. And she tells a lie, and she becomes drama queen, etc. And so verse 16, so she left his garment beside her. Oh, look at that. I'm trying to give you, and maybe you can not relate to this whole story. I'm trying to give us a picture about changing garments. And she falsely, but she grabs the garment, she keeps it, and she lays it in the bed as though stuff has gone on that didn't. And she leaves it there until her husband shows up so she can have a false proof. Sounds like some stuff going on today. Okay. Just saying. Sounds like some stuff going on today. That he was a sexual businessman who changed his garments to become a personal servant. He gets promoted in the house. He gets stripped of his garment again. It is left in the bed, and it's there so that the ruler of the house can see, and he becomes falsely accused. In verse 12 and 13, his garment is left, which results in another garment being given to him. In verse 20, so Joseph's master took him and put him in jail, and the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in jail. So he changes garments again, and he puts on the garments of a prisoner. He puts on the garments of a prisoner. And he's now having to live out a sentence of something that others accused him of that he didn't do, but the call and the gift lived on. The call and the gift lived on, even though he got robbed, his tunic, his garments were stolen. But the righteous will fall down 7 times, and they're resilient, and they keep coming back. Because faithful is he who has called you, who will also bring it to pass. But I want you to just get a picture of the test that Joseph went through on how many different garments he successfully had to put on. And I wonder why. Because maybe there were skill sets that he was to acquire and learn in every one of those that was a part of every garment he wore. A servant to a king, a businessman, a brother, a favored son, a slave, a prisoner. And in every one of the changes of garments, there were character miracles that God wanted to do so that there would be a test that Joseph could keep passing, because when you pass a test, you graduate to the next garment. when you pass the test, you graduate to the next garment or the next sphere. Garments are representations of spheres. You got it? You getting it? Okay, we got to keep going. Yo-yo, he-yabo, shobo, holy, okay. Verse 20, he's put in jail. Verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph. Oh my gosh. I thought the Lord would only be with him if he was in the palace. No, now he's a freaking, I need to quit using that word. Now he's a prisoner. He's in jail. Why didn't he just slip into the victim mindset and go, I have been so mistreated. Listen to this. Have you ever felt forgotten? Okay, in my own life, I'm 66 years old right now. I have gained and lost so many reputations. I gain a reputation and then it feels like, I'm not saying it's true, I said it feels like. I gain a reputation, then it's just like it gets stripped from me. I was famous at Kansas City Prophets. And then I was asked to leave the city. Really? By my brothers. Well, that's unfair. Unfair. Well, life is unfair, but God is just. And my response is what God was looking for. And I was a tree amongst a forest. And then he takes that tree and he plants it in another city. And I was no longer a tree in a forest. I was a tree in a city that had another destiny that was yet to be unfolded. So now I'm an artist. Because why? Because I'm putting on another garment. Oh, Jesus, I should have brought different clothes. And it's like, and it's like, and everyone's like, put on different for every, and like, yeah, now I'm a crooner, okay? See, I even have different glasses now. I mean, okay, enough already, okay. Yeah. So, I think you're starting to get the picture. Joseph, the master, took him, put him in jail, verse 21. The Lord was with him, though. He extends kindness to him in jail. And now look what happens. Look what happens. This is incredible. And he gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. Because why? He served everywhere he went. Everywhere he went, he was a servant. The chief jailer committed Joseph eventually to the charge of all the prisoners. He's going, this guy's got something on his life. It's called integrity. And if he can pass the test of that, well, wow, I really want my jail to go well. And I don't want these guys freaking out too much. I use the word again. I mean, acting up too much. So I'm going to put this guy who's already gone through the test of changing garments. And he just seems flexible and ambidextrous. And it's like, I wonder, wow, how's this guy do this? Well, I think I'm just going to let's advance him. Because every test comes with a graduation. And so he now graduates to the next sphere. And in the jail, as a prisoner, he now becomes what? He's the servant now over everybody who's in prison. Have you ever felt like you've been put in prison? Have you ever felt like you've been forgotten? Well, serve. Serve your king. Serve the audience of one. Are you doing it because you have a platform? Or are you doing it all as unto the Lord and you know that He sees? Or do you compromise when you think no one's noticing because there's test? And every garment change, if you'll get it redemptively, is another opportunity for advancement. Okay. Verse 22, the chief jailer committed to Joseph the charge of all the prisoners who were in jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. Wow. I don't know if I want that response. Okay. Verse 23, now watch what happens. The chief jailer puts him over everything. The chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. So like the chief jailer checks out because he's got, man, things are going so well. It's like, dude, God highly favored me. And it's like, I got the best of the cream of the crop. And I don't even have to check in on this guy. Chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge because the Lord is with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made him to prosper. Amazing. And whatever he did, the Lord made him to prosper. Now let's go on, flip to chapter 41. Chapter 41, verse 23. So he's now prospering after having gone through another change of garments of being a prisoner. And he is given the responsibility over everyone who's in the prison. And not only that, the chief jailer just goes on vacation because this guy is doing so well. It's like, gosh, things have never run better in the prison system. We have got the model prison system. I think I'll write this up as a blueprint, and it can get modeled all over the world, and they'll come look at our prison because it's really going well. But there was a favor upon a person. There was a gift, a calling upon a person who knew servanthood, no matter the sphere of influence, whatever cultural mountain he was sent to, he walked in servanthood and excellence. Okay, chapter 41, verse 23. Yeah, 41, 23. Is that right? 41. Not sure that's right. Okay, chapter 39, we did that. Let me look at this. Basically, what ends up happening is that he is now forgotten. Though he's over the whole jail, he interprets the dreams, and then even though he succeeds, even in his prophetic gifting, in the middle of the prison, he actually then gets free. You think he's going to now advance and get the free ticket out, but he has forgotten. He has forgotten. And then let's go to Genesis chapter 41, verse 14. Then Pharaoh sent and called him. After he goes through the time of feeling forgotten, then this happens. Then the Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And when he had shaved him, changed his clothes, they brought him to Pharaoh, because the report of his integrity, his character, and his giftedness preceded him. And it goes before the Pharaoh. And they quickly said, where's that guy that has that capacity? Said, it's like we forgot all about that guy. But guess who never did? God never forgot him. Though you go through seasons where you might feel like God forgot your name and he does not know your address, God always knew Joseph's address. Then, chapter 41, verse 14, Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and he hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon, no longer in prison clothes, and he shaved him, and he changed his clothes. And he changes his garments again, because he passed another test. And he came to Pharaoh. Now, chapter 41, verse 38. Verse 38. The Pharaoh sent to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is a divine spirit? They end up recognizing by the fruit the supernatural call that was upon his life. Is there anybody like this guy who has a what? A divine spirit. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has informed you of all of this, there is no one so what? Discerning. Yeah, that's what I thought when I saw that. I said, I should have wrote this in that book. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has informed you of all of this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you are. So shall you be over my house according to your command, and all my people, not only in jail, and all of my people, which is including his brothers and his father, and all of my people shall do homage. Only in the throne I will be greater than you. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all. Say all. I have set you over all the land. I don't know if Joseph really ever had that as his goal, but God did. I want you to know this. If you'll be faithful in little, God will make you a ruler over much. If you're faithful in the natural, Jesus said, I'll make you a ruler over true spiritual riches. If you're faithful, excuse me, it says, if you're faithful with little, I will make you a ruler over much. If you are faithful in another's, I will give you your own. And if you're faithful with mammon, natural riches, I will make you a ruler over true spiritual riches. So the teaching of Jesus is faithfulness brings increase. In whatever sphere it is, whatever garment you have on, you have the opportunity to shift the climate and walk in excellence, even if you've been made mistakes, falsely accused, your garments have been stripped. You always have the opportunity to walk in integrity. Okay. Chapter 41, verse 38 to 42. Verse 41, Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Verse 42, then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand, put it on Joseph's hand. Now look what he does. And clothed him with garments of fine linen. Sounds like the gift of righteousness to me. Garments of fine linen, and put on him the gold necklace around his neck. Once, look at verse 43. He made him ride in his second chariot, and they would proclaim before him, bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Egypt. He changed his garments again. If you'll be faithful in the garments of servanthood, if you will be faithful in the garments of false accusation, if you will be faithful and know your true inheritance, it don't make no difference in one way what garment you got on. You will win before God. You will win before God. I want you to know this today. I'm a nobody. And some of you go, it's obvious. No. You know, I'm a nobody who knows somebody who knows all things. In my own little pilgrimage, I am not the type of person, and some are, that all of a sudden was put in the elevator and got to go on this ride, and I went from level 1 to 10 overnight. And no, I've been what I call a staircaser most of my life, and I just plod along in faithfulness, one step at a time, another step, and then another step. And sometimes people fail along the way, and I honestly, I try. I'm not trying to boast about my character. No, I'm trying to give you an example. And I just keep walking. I just keep plodding. I'm a plodder, folks. And other people are shooting stars, and they drop their garments. And sometimes along the way, I just go, look at this one. Nobody wants it. See. Anyway, despite what I said earlier, okay? Oh, I wonder if I'm supposed to. It's just, nobody wants it. I wonder if I could borrow that. I remember years ago when I was making my first set of study notes in Kansas City, working at Grace Training Center before there was ever an IHOP Kansas City World. And I was asked to teach a class, and so I taught a class, and I put study notes together. I did detailed notes. And I taught a class for more like almost like a Sunday school class kind of thing, basically. And on spiritual gifts. And then I did up like 9 outlines. And I did another class on prayer, Watchmen on the Walls. And then I ended up looking at this, and I went, if I put this all together, this might be a study guide. And then the Lord gives me a dream, and He shows me in the dream, I go through a door here at the end, and I walked through the door, and when I went through the door, it was a hallway I went into. And in the hallway, there was doors all lined up here, and doors all lined in through here. And the Lord spoke to me, and He said, I'm opening a door for you that will lead to doors. I didn't have an idea what that was about. You know what that was about? My notes. It was about my notes. That I was being faithful with my notes. Did you hear me? I was being faithful in a little class with my notes. And as I was faithful, and I walked through that door, it ended up opening up a hallway of doors where I took those notes, I made them into a study guide, I transcribed everything, and 20 years ago, I wrote my first book. And now I've written or co-written 45 in a 21-year period of time, which is kind of unprecedented. But what's that? It's because I was just faithful. I was just faithful in little. And now the doors that's ended up opening, and my stuff some of it's translated in over 20 languages. And I pinch myself because I came from Cowgill, a town of 259 people. I was a nobody, see, who knew somebody who knows all things. And my daddy was homeless. My daddy got a 6th grade education, so he was like, okay. No, because God knows. And God gave me an inheritance. And no matter if my garment gets stripped or my garment has to change, God's call remains the same. And so now I end up like on TV shows, and I end up in international convocations with sometimes tens of thousands of people, and sometimes I'm in little out-of-the-way things, and I'm in homes where there's 10 people, and then next time I'm with 10,000, and then the next time I have no seemingly function at all, and I'm just a guardian intercessor, and because it's not about my name being promoted. It's about faithfulness and integrity, no matter what garment I wear. Okay, I'm almost done. So he gets put on clothes of fine linen. Verse 38 then to 42, great favor is given. Chapter 42, verse 6 and 7, he now disguises himself. That means he changes garments. So Joseph was the ruler over the land. He was the one whom was sold to the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came out, bowed down to him, and their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, they recognized him, and he disguised himself to them. And he spoke to them harshly. And Joseph is now an actor. And now he is an actor. He's not actually lying. He's playing out a prophetic storyline. Verse 23. Then they did not know, however, that this was Joseph. They did not, and that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between them. He turned away from them. See, they come back, and Joseph can't handle it because God is unfolding his dreams. God, after all these years, after all these testings, after all these changes of garments, after going from pits to pinnacles, Then it goes full circle where the sun and the moon, they bow down to him and all that stuff. Well, that's about his brothers. And now it happens. And Joseph is so overwhelmed that God has been faithful that he weeps. Verse 23. Joseph turned away from them and he wept. But when he returned to them and he spoke to them, he took, it's so awesome. He just turns the table on the whole thing. And he took Simeon from them and he bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to restore every man's money to a sack and give them provisions. And the man who had everything stolen by his brothers acts, in a sense, in the opposite spirit, and he becomes a giver. And he loads them up with gifts and sends them on their way to their father. It's amazing. It's gosh, I'm undone by this today. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags. Whoa! So now he's a wealthy man. Gone from a prison, from a pit to a prison. Now he's a man of substance, and now he's a man of substance. Now he's a man of substance. Now he's a man who builds a tower. Now he's a man of substance. Now he's a consultant to the billionaires. And God entrusts to him a substance. But he, in this sense, and I know there's a lot more to the story, he just doesn't store it up all for himself. And he gives it to his brothers so that they could also succeed. That he wept. And so something gets worked in him, because instead of bitterness, he has now a desire that everyone will do better. That's a test of changing garments, of this for that, tit for tat, revenge. No. And he goes and he moves in the opposite spirit to release a blessing to even those who stripped him of his garment. Okay. 43 verse 30. We now have a lot of weeping that goes on. I have to skip some to get to this. And then they end up leaving, and then they have to come back because Joseph was really smart, because, and then they went, well, where did all this money come from, and where did all this, and, and the father sends them, and, it's a whole nother now, a major, he's an actor in a play. Verse 30, Joseph, and then the brothers, they come back, they're with Joseph. Joseph hurried out, for he was deeply stirred over his brother. And he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber, and he wept there. And he washed his face. Verse 31. And he came out, and he controlled himself. And he said, serve the meal. He is now a provider. And again, he has an opportunity to be bitter out of life's circumstances. And instead, as they say, you either bitter or you become better. And he became a better man. And he took the provision that God eventually gave him in the test of changing of garments. And instead of being a hoarder, they don't deserve this, it's mine. He makes a decision that he is going to share, and he throws a grand banquet, and he becomes a provider. Then he disguised himself, he weeps, a redemptive plan comes, he weeps again. Watch chapter 45, almost done. Chapter 45, 1-3. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried, have everyone go out from me. So then there was no man with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And what's he have to do? He strips himself of his garments. And he goes, I'm you. I am one of you. And they were, I'm going to say it again, they were freaking afraid for that to happen. Because he was the one that was put in prison, and they're afraid that this ever truth came out that they will be put in prison. Then he could have done that, and he does not. He does not. He did not. Chapter 45, verse 2, he wept loudly. The Egyptians heard it. The household of the Pharaoh heard it. And then Joseph said to his brothers, I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed. And his brothers were going, oh God, I don't know. What can we do? Like, we know what we did to him, and we know that he knows what we did to him. It's like, I don't know. It was like I would like to stick my tail in between my and run. No. Verse 4, then Joseph said to his brothers, please come closer to me. And they came closer, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into slavery. Now do not grieve or angry with yourselves. He's now going to help heal them. He's going to turn, and he's going to now help heal his brothers. And he could have cast shame and blame, in a sense, rightfully. And he does not. He walks in the opposite spirit, and he takes the internal security that he has received from God, and he takes that to heal his brothers. Okay. That's chapter 45, verse 3. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. And his brothers could not answer him. They were dismayed. Please come closer. Verse 5, do not be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve my life. And he, instead of victim mindset, he comes up higher into a redemptive interpretation of life. Chapter 45, verse 22. To each of them. Look now. Oh, I just love this. This is maybe one of my new favorite verses in the Bible. 45:22. To each of them, he gave a change of garments. Have you ever seen that? To each of them. And it isn't done yet. To each of them, he gives a change of, he gives an opportunity for them. He says, don't be angry with yourself. He leads them into forgiveness. Not only him forgiving them, he's helping them create the culture of them forgiving themselves. Don't be angry with yourself. I'm not holding this against you. God has gone before you, and he's even used that which is meant for evil, and God has turned it for good. That's what he says. And look what he does. This shows how character can shine, and God can turn anything around for good. Verse 22, to each of them he gave a change of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. That's grace. And grace gets multiplied to the son of his right hand. And he offers a change of garments. Chapter 46, verse 29, I think. Joseph prepared his chariot. He went up to Goshen to meet the father Israel. As soon as he appeared before him, he fell on his neck, and he wept on his neck a long time. And there is a reconciliation, a restoration that happens between him and his father. And he doesn't say, it's compassion hands. Compassion will rule the day. And he fell on his neck, and it says, and he wept on him for a long time. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, some of us have already come. But it is by grace. I have not perfected this message, but I think that God has a plan to try to, no, not to try. God has a plan to perfect this message in me, to change garments, to not be bitter, and to end up becoming a provider. I could go through a lot of my own personal story more, but I think I've done enough. And all the injustices that are even in our generational trees, what the devil has meant for evil, our Father can make and use for good. He will use for good. Please don't hear me right now like in endorsing divorce, but please hear me on this. No matter what your background is, no matter what your background is, no matter what your background is, you can always start over. No matter what your background is. I used to say that God was a God of a second chance. I don't say it anymore. I don't say it anymore. I say that God's a chance. God's a God of 50 million chances. And there is a subliminal reason that will no longer be subliminal of why I felt directed to bring this message about Joseph changing garments. Because you're supposed to change garments. I remember, oh gosh, this is too vulnerable. I remember years ago, next Sunday, I'm going to be at the church I started 40 years ago. It's crazy. It's like, well, what? Yes, I am. I'm the founder. I'm going to be back at the very church. I think it's like about 40 years ago or longer. It's fascinating to me. My daddy helped us build that church building. That man that got kicked out of the house when he was 12 and got a 6th grade education, he ended up with his own lumberyard, and he was a rough man, but he came to faith genuinely later in life. I ended up with the privilege of getting to water baptize my own earthly father and pray with him to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And I got to preach at his funeral. And I didn't have to preach him from hell to heaven because of the great grace of God. And he got an opportunity to change garments for being an abuser. He didn't change all of his ways, but he did get a new garment of a white linen garment of a gift of righteousness. He did. And we can live in the past of what we suffered, or we can step out of it, learn from it, and we ourselves can change garments. Not only that, we can help other people change garments. And that's what I want. So I remember the day. I know it's late. I only come once a year or 2 years. And I remember the day when I was in Warrensburg, Missouri at Harvest Fellowship. And I had a call to join Mike Bickle, Bob Jones, Paul Kane, and what was emerging in Kansas City all those many years ago to be a part of the Kansas City Prophets. But it cost me something to do it. I had to leave the security of what I knew, which was pastoring with a meager salary, but it was a salary, to go and have no salary and live by faith and obedience with little kids. I'm not telling anybody here to do that, but it's what the Lord required of me, to step out of a certain level of security into the unknown, into the unfamiliar, to step into another sphere. I remember the day that I said, what I'm about to say to you at that church will make some of you mad, will make some of you sad, and will make some of you glad. And I told the story how the Holy Spirit spoke to me that I was to turn the church over to the associate pastor. And then about 9 months later, I ended up moving to Kansas City. And it was one of the hardest and one of the best things I ever did. And what I had to do was let go. I'm at another time in life where the Lord just, for 3 years, only word I heard from God myself was let go. Let go, let go. I was so tired of hearing let go because I kept thinking I had let go. And I had. And then he would say let go, and I would have to let go of something else. I finally am hearing a new word. I'm finally hearing arise and build. And I haven't heard that word in 12 years. For me, myself, from God. I'm finally hearing a new word. It's arise and build. It's arise and build. Have I changed? I hope I have, because I believe in character miracles. But I have, like all the rest of you, I've had to change garments. And I just want to say, you can wear more than one hat at the same time. In the past, that was almost like not allowed. But we just went through an example of Joseph. And Joseph was faithful in whatever sphere. And so if he designed a clothing line, he did. If he designed and walked as a consultant to entrepreneurs, he did. But he always remembered who he was. And listen to this. And unless you vacate the familiarity, you will be hindering someone else's opportunity to graduate. So this is not a declaration saying anything. No. But I am trying to help create an atmosphere that changing garments is something to be celebrated, not to be feared. You got it? Okay, well, that's my potpourri message on Joseph, a man of many garments, with you today. Would you stand? I knew it was going to take me a while to unpack that, and so I know that this has been a long service, particularly for you with little kids. So, Father, I just want to thank you, and I bless this wonderful house. And I bless this house with the grace to go from, this is the 5th building I've been in. It's my favorite of all 5. And I just declare that while you're underground, the Lord is going to reshape your DNA, and you're going to be challenged, but you're actually going to be coming up higher than before when you had, as it were, above ground, a wider place. Because as your roots go deep, the fruit can become more diverse and more abundant. So I just bless you with the grace that this message will find in each of your lives to change garments, to go from bitter to better. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Amen.